coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
To our viewers. And that is the purpose of our program as we had over the past. And there are many programs that we did in the past that you can go to oggn.org and you're able to see some of those recordings. A lot of information is there. So if you have some time, please go to oggn.org. A whole lot of information, oil and gas sector. This evening, we are going to discuss a very important topic, and it has been discussed widely in Guyana, and we think it's only fair that we also talk about it here on this program. And it's all about the gas to energy project and its legal challenges. To help us through this program tonight, no stranger to us, an outstanding daughter of Guyana. She is Miss Dean Hughes, attorney at law and civil rights activist. And all the way in Europe, in Europe is Dr. Andre Brandli, professor at the University of Munich in Germany, and also an OGGN director. Madam Hughes, Dr. Brandli, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you, Charles. Always happy to be back on the show here and to bring also a European perspective of Guyanese in the diaspora. And I'm, of course, particularly happy that Liz Dean Hughes decided or accepted our invitation to be on the show. And I'm really looking forward to her viewpoints to this very important topic.
Thank you, Dr. Brandli. Mrs. Hughes?
Thank you. It's actually Miss.
Miss.
Thank you very much, Charles. Greetings of peace to everyone, and Jai Gurudev. I am happy to be here to join OGGN in this forum discussing the Gas to Energy project, which has been very close to my heart and which I have worked on for the last 18 months. So I am honored. So thank you very much for the invitation to both of you.
And we are very honored to have you as well, Ms. Dean Hughes. First, I have a lot of questions tonight, so I want to get right into our question. The first question I have is, to both of you, and maybe Dr. Brandli, can I start with us? What is the Gas to Energy project, and what is its purpose?
Okay, so the Gas to Energy project, the idea is to pipe gas from offshore to shore, and to burn that gas to produce electricity. So that's maybe putting this in a few words. And the idea is that Guyana suffers from power outages. As a matter of fact, when I was having a Zoom conference earlier this week with Liz, it turned out that she had a blackout and we had to wait a little bit and she could get back. So ever since I've been traveling back to Guyana, there have always been blackouts, and it's really time that we can fix this problem to have a more stable electricity supply. The other question, of course, is that Guyana's electricity costs are pretty high because the way currently the electricity is produced is by burning fossil fuels, in this case, diesel and heavy oil. And this is also from an environmental point of view, of course, not the best way of doing it. So the Gas to Energy project wants to utilize gas that is a byproduct of the oil extraction process offshore. Currently, Guyana has two floating production, offloading and storage boats that are central to the gas extraction process offshore. Like they are at Liza 1 and Liza 2. These are the two reservoirs that are currently being tapped. Payara will go online by the end of the year. So that would be a third possibility. Now, the idea is to pipe excess gas to the shore and then use that gas to burn this gas and produce electricity. We'll probably get back a little later for the details about this process. And maybe one thing to add, when you produce oil or extract oil, depending on the reservoir, you have different degrees of gas that is associated. So you can have reservoirs or oil reservoirs offshore, in this case, that have essentially very little gas. And you have other ones that are predominantly gas. So this depends on the different reservoirs that you have. Yes, so I think that is sufficient to get started. Mm-hmm.
And with the experience that we have in Guyana or the information we have, how much gas will like Liza 1 have and Liza 2, and then we go to Payara, and will the gas to shore pipeline, will it be coming from Liza 1, Liza 2, Payara, and the other project, or just two of our oil fields, in your view?
Okay, so this actually brings me to the point, what does this project really comprise of? Now, the project has essentially three elements. One is the gas pipeline that you mentioned that would bring gas from the production sites or the oil extraction sites offshore with a subsea pipeline from Liza 1 and from Liza 2. That's about almost 190 kilometers. I think the landing site is at Fredden Hoop. Liz, can you confirm that?
No, it's at Crane, Nouvelle Flanders, and it's 220 kilometers plus or minus.
Okay, so it's in the ballpark of about 200 kilometers. So that would be subsea. And then afterwards, you would have onshore a pipeline that would take it then to the final site where you would have the two other elements of this whole gas to energy project, which is the natural gas liquids processing site, where you would then separate the gas into different components. These different components can be then butane, methanol, different gas hydrocarbon-based gases that can be used for cooking, that can be used to be burned, or can also be used for other pharmaceutical, but petrochemical processes. This site will also have then the gas-fired power plant. That is a 300 megawatt power plant. This is all located in Wales. This is on the west bank of the Demerara. It's about, I guess, 20 kilometers upstream from the mouth of the Demerara River. And it's located on a former sugar estate site that, as far as I know, belongs to Gaisuco, which is the state-owned sugar company. So that's the bottom line here. We have three elements: a gas pipeline, initially subsea, afterwards onshore, then the facilities at Wales that are comprised of the gas-fired power plant and the natural gas liquids processing plant. So, yeah, I think that's what the public needs to know. The other point is, of course, who is involved. It's Exxon got the task, ExxonMobil Guyana got the task for installing the pipeline from the two FPSOs that are the production sites or the oil extraction sites at Liza 1 and Liza 2. They are in charge of building this pipeline to the shore and then to the facility at Wales. And the government of Guyana is responsible for building the facility at Wales, and I guess the gas-fired power plant will be run by GPL, the Guyana Power and the Guyanese utility company.
Thank you, Dr. Brandl. And for those of you who are listening for the first time on this oil and gas sector, where the pipeline that we're talking, the gas to energy project, I think Dr. Brandl has laid out very, very clearly what is the purpose of this project and what it can do for Guyana. As we said, OGGN is an information dissemination organization. And we want to thank you, those on you on radio, on YouTube, and on Facebook. If you like the program, give us a thumbs up. Call your friends and family. Let them know that all talk with OGGN Guyana is on the air. Ms. Hughes, is there anything you want to add to what Dr. Brandl just said?
Yeah, well, these are points of that need clarity, because on the website of the Ministry of Natural Resources, they have this project as the gas to power or gas to shore. So the project has had many different names, and we are not really even sure if the gas to energy is part of a larger project, basically, at this point in time. There's also an issue with the NGL plant, because ExxonMobil, on behalf of the Stabroek Block Partners, was given in their environmental permit, it includes the NGL plant. Afterwards, the NGL plant was taken off. So that becomes a bugbear of how they're going to actually take out the NGL plant from the environmental permit that they have been given. So I just wanted to add those as points that need to be clarified.
Thank you. I know, Dr. Brandl, you mentioned about the different elements that is comprising of the gas and so on with this gas energy project. Is there any indication what might be the overall cost that will be incurred for the line from the platform to onshore and then from onshore to Wales, and who's bearing that cost?
That's a very good question. And just before I answer that question, the issue that Celestine Hughes had mentioned with regard to the environmental permits, we can address this a little bit later on in the show. It's a very important point, and that's one reason why we have Liz also on the program here. Now, what are the project costs? So we have the costs for laying the pipeline from the production sites offshore to the coast, and then the pipeline to the integrated facility at Wales. Those costs are estimated to be about $1 billion US. So this is already a huge amount of money. And Exxon is basically financing this initially, but the government of Guyana has to pay these costs back. Then we have this site, the integrated facility. There, the costs are currently estimated to be about $750 million US. All these numbers are in US dollars. It's easier for me to do this in US dollars than in Guyanese dollars. This is based on a tender process where the contract went to a US Puerto Rican-based consortium called CH4 Linsacaya. They're in charge of building the power plant and the integrated power plant and the gas separation facility. The costs for this facility should be pre-financed through a loan by the American Export-Import Bank. However, this is stalled in a way because it's called the United States Export-Import Bank. Sorry for not giving you the name correctly. $650 million US roughly. The government of Guyana wants to get as a loan from this American bank. It's stalled because, as far as I understand, there are provisions that this Export-Import Bank should no longer finance projects that develop further infrastructure that doesn't serve a low carbon purpose. So there it's unclear whether the government of Guyana will be able to actually get this loan. We also don't know no details how much interest we would have to pay for such a loan. My feeling or my understanding is if Guyana doesn't get the US loan, obviously having a American contractor, an American-based contractor setting up the facility, of course, is a good, is a plus point in getting the loan. But of course, changes in the financing conditions for projects make this a little bit more difficult. So we'll have to see how this works out. My gut feeling is that the money will be taken out of the Natural Resource Fund if the US won't finance or not grant a loan for this project. So overall costs are 1.8 billion officially. We have no idea how much this will really cost. I think what we can say very clearly, it's the largest infrastructure project that Guyana has ongoing, where the overall responsibility is with the government of Guyana, and the people of Guyana have to foot the bill one way or the other. The other open question is, do we get the gas for free? As far as I understood, this gas would be provided for free. The Vice President has been mentioning this in the past. I'm, however, not completely sure whether this is still the case. So we'll have to see. The other question, of course, is why is this gas suddenly available? And that's another issue that we might discuss a little bit later. At present, the gas is either re-injected into the reservoirs or it's flared. So let's get back to this maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely we will. And I don't know if Ms. Hughes, any comment on that?
Yes, Andre, the pipeline's funding has changed somewhat. In February, the head of the task force informed us what Andre said, that ExxonMobil and Stabroek Block on behalf of Stabroek Block Partners would be funding the entire pipeline. But if you go to Exim Bank's website, the offshore part of the pipeline is in the application for the loan on the category A. So we're not sure who really is funding it. There is an application currently at the Exim Bank for the offshore funding. So that has changed somewhat, and now there is some level of confusion. The head of the task force has been asked to clarify this, and of course there has been no response to this. In addition to the prices that Andre mentioned, which were the pipeline and the NGL and power plant, this project makes no sense unless you add in the transmission lines, which a contract has been given to an Indian firm, and now there's a control center. We also need to factor in the fact that
Correct.
this project recently has been delayed by a year, so there are late fees or late. The Honorable Vice President had informed us that Lyseca CH4, whose contract was supposed to begin in June of 2023, had heavy penalties for any lateness. So we are not really sure if we are in a penalty phase or not. Recently, on a site visit to the actual NGL and power plant site, and this was also reported in the papers, the actual site preparation isn't completely finished because they're not driving foundation as yet. So that is that is another cost into the project. So the Auditor General has, at his own invitation, when there was the Sugate, had asked members of the public to, ask for investigations into that particular matter. I'm assuming that that invitation was for any matter that concerned the general public. And he has been asked to investigate the running cost of this GT project, because we also need to realize that there's no FID. And without an FID, there is no contract. What is happening is Exxon, on behalf of Stabroek Block Partners, are doing what the government is asking them to do. But there is no contractual arrangement, and therefore there's no risk for Exxon. The risk currently runs with us. And until they have an FID, Guyana is running a humongous risk with a lot of expenses because ExxonMobil will get all of this back out to cost oil anyway. So,
And Mr. Hughes, you
Could you
want to tell our listeners what is a FID?
oh, sorry, that's a final investment decision. Yeah, so the Stabroek Block partners individually and collectively, so each one of them, ExxonMobil, CNOOC, and Hess, which may become Chevron or whatever it is going to become, they each individually need to make a decision about whether this project is viable financially from their point of view. And then collectively as Stabroek Block partners, they need to come to a decision about whether or not they are going to invest in this project. And right now, there is no final investment decision from anybody at this point in time. So right now, the only people that are running the risks here are the people of Guyana and the government of Guyana, because there is no contractual arrangement.
And fellow Guyanese, you're listening to Ms. Liz Dean Hughes and Dr. Andre Brandley, and these are unadulterated, non-political statements they're making. So there's no political side on this. This is about Guyana. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Brandley is Guyanese, roots in Guyana, but he spent most of his years out there in Switzerland and in Europe. So what we are hearing tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is the unadulterated truth of this project. Gentlemen and lady, before I move on, just clarification. Is there, in your knowledge, is there a comparative project like this that was undertaken any part of the world?
I'm going to be happily address this question. I have one question of clarification because Liz added some very important information with regard to the loan requests to the United States Export-Import Bank. What's in the public domain, the newspapers, that's what I was quoting, is that Guyana is seeking $646 million for financing the integrated facility at Wales. Now, if I understood you correct, they're actually, what you've been able to find, that they actually want to get even more money to finance also the pipeline. Did I understand you correct on that?
I don't know if they want more money. I can tell you what the application of the loan is, because there is no information of how much the loan application is for. The application on the website is for the offshore pipeline, the NGL plant, and the 300 megawatt power plant, which is a huge change from what was stated at the energy conference in February, when we were blindsided with the 55 million we would have to pay back ExxonMobil on behalf of Stabroek Block partners. So there has they keep repeating the same story in the press that it's $55 million that we have to pay back Stabroek Block partners, but I don't know if suddenly the onshore pipeline is just $55 million. You know, figures keep popping out the year.
I mean, as far as I understand, it's 55 million over 20 years to pay off that $1 billion cost of the pipeline. And we don't know, we of course don't know what the final costs will really be. Good. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next point, and I'll hand back to Charles.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Andre. What is the current status of the gas to energy project? I know you guys mentioned a lot of things, you know, in our discussion, but what is the current status of that project?
I think, let me go first, and I think Liz, who is on the ground, can give us a very detailed account of this. What one can take from the published literature in Guyanese news media is that Exxon has given contracts to a whole bunch of partners to get started with the project. You can see pictures with piping already available. I don't think there's any piping has been installed yet, but they've already been storing the piping that they would need for the subsea and for the onshore piping. I think this is what I can tell right now, and they're doing some surveying business onshore, and I think that's where Liz is much better qualified to give you an exact status on the project. Before I hand over to Liz, I would just mention the timelines. She already addressed that the timelines are probably not realistic. I believe that too. For several reasons. We have court challenges ongoing. There are issues of permits that are still missing. The current pipeline is that by the end of next year, the power plant and the pipeline should be ready. And there is there's an obvious reason. We have elections coming up latest in 2025, and the current administration wants to have this as a cornerstone achievement of their administration. So they are pushing this very strongly that this should be already by the end of 2024. I think it's completely unrealistic. My projections is it will take at least 2 to 3 more years until this is really fully functional. As Liz mentioned already, the project does not only just have these 3 elements, but you also have to get the power lines in place. You have to have this what was it called again? The control center. Thank you for filling me in on that term. The control center has also been set up. I'm also not sure why this had to go to an Indian company, but that's a separate discussion. So I hand over to Liz to give us an update on how things look on the ground there. And since she's also a landowner there, she has probably a lot more to fill in. Over to you, Liz.
Thanks. Okay, so in 2022, the 2 companies were awarded the offshore pipeline pipe laying, which is over a year and change ago. From I don't know what is going on there because no information is publicly available. In probably around somewhere May, June, July of this year, they started laying the onshore pipeline at the point in which there is a court case. In canal number 1, they started, the court case is in Bordeaux, which is on one side of the canal, and they started laying the pipes in Java. There is pipeline laying going on at the moment in Java, but they have no access to the land, at least one piece of land in Bordeaux, and they brazenly came to try and trespass on the land. While the court case is going on. I don't know if we're going to get into this later, or shall I?
Okay. Just to say one thing, Ms. Hughes, and I guess you will also hear this. When the coalition was there, the estimated this project could have been something below $1 billion, I believe, if I'm correct.
It was 300. It started at 340 million, but it didn't have 25 kilometers of pipeline, and those are the feasibility studies that are up on the ministry's website. That was on the coast at Clonbrook. It did not take in 25 kilometers of onshore pipeline. So I don't know how come it, this has 25 kilometers.
How much was the original? Do you know how much was the original pipeline?
I think it was 300, the original length of pipeline.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know. Clonbrook is on the coast, maybe 10 miles. I have no idea. It's right on the coast.
You. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the role of the Environmental Protection Agency in the gas to project energy project? Maybe Mrs. Hughes, you can start there, Ms. Hughes.
And it's Hughes. I know I'm huge, but my name is Hughes.
Okay, Ms. D. Hughes.
Thank you very much. The Environmental Protection Agency is really the body that is a statutory body that is mandated to ensure that the Environmental Protection Act is followed in all projects, and especially in this gas to energy project. It has failed humongously to ensure this in this gas to energy project, because not only has there been a court case which has determined that that the agency acted contrary to law and improperly in the granting of the environmental permit to ExxonMobil on behalf of Stabroek Block Partners. Just the other day I called because on the face value of the environmental permit, there are certain things they're supposed to be doing. So I called up the head of the oil and gas sector, who chose to answer his phone, mind you, and asked him about the regulations that they're supposed to have some terms of reference and some other things. He admitted that ExxonMobil on behalf of Stabroek Block Partners submitted it, but the Environmental Protection Agency had not approved it. Now, this is roughly 1 year after the fact. And suddenly, when I started asking him other questions, like why, and further down there are other things that are not in place, like the stakeholder engagement plan or the community grievance mechanism, which doesn't work. He suddenly remembered that he was in a meeting with ExxonMobil and he couldn't answer me. And so he put the phone down. So I never got the information that I needed to know about the environmental permit. So even if you take the environmental permit on face values, they're not even adhering to what's in that permit, even though the permit has been granted, as being contrary to the law and improperly gained.
Dr. Banda, you want to add anything? As Ms. Yu said, it was really observing the breach, the Environmental Protection Agency, in the awarding of this project.
I think one has to look at the three elements, and I guess each element has to be assessed separately. You have the pipeline project, you have the natural gas liquids facility, and you have the gas-fired power plant. And all of them have to, at least in my understanding, need to undergo an environmental impact assessment. I recall that the EPA had waived that requirement for the gas power plant, which is, in my opinion, completely not understandable. If you set up any power plant, you need to have this type of an assessment. And they said it's not necessary. So, anybody will be any public citizen, any citizen will probably think, what's the impact if I have this in my backyard? They're going to be you're going to be burning natural gas. There might be sulfur emissions if this gas contains sulfur and nitrogen oxide emissions by burning this, and this has to be assessed, and you have to maybe also modify the plant that you can recapture or prevent these byproducts of burning natural gas, that you can recover these. So all this has to be assessed, and you have to see what's the impact on the environment, and how this will impact the people living in the neighborhood and people also in the metropolitan area of Georgetown. I think this is standard to do this. I'm not saying that this would block this plant, but you cannot just waive these requirements ad libitum. They have to be carried out. And we have seen, if you start doing this, we had last week Wanda Ratzig here talking about the Schlumberger shore base, where radioactivity should be stored. And the Environmental Protection Agency had again waived the requirement for an environmental impact assessment, which again was totally crazy in my opinion, because if you're handling radioactive liquids, you have to have this environmental impact assessment. You have to check, is there any danger for the neighborhood? Are the correct procedures there to deal with radioactive waste? What kind of radioactivity do we have there? Alpha emitters, beta emitters, gamma emitters. How do you dispose? What's the of the waste? What's the half-life of these radioactive compounds? I mean, this is not rocket science. This is just regular standards. I've been running a radioactive lab in Munich in my lab, and I have to adhere to these standards too. I have to account for all the radioactive material that comes into my lab. I have to store it correctly. I have to dispose of it correctly, and I need to have a permit to run a lab that has radioactivity. So one is not asking for crazy things. It's just standard procedures. So when I read in the newspapers that the EPA had just waived the requirement, it was just looking for trouble. And to be quite honest, Schlumberger should have sued the EPA for giving them wrong advice. So using that example from last week, I think you maybe understand, the listeners might understand that it's inconceivable that you can provide an environmental permit to a gas power plant without having the necessary and by law required environmental impact assessment done. So this is my view about this, and I think Liz, being a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a natural scientist, biochemist, so she can definitely give us a much better reflection on the status of how well the Environmental Protection Act has been followed and implemented with this gas to energy project. And I hand over to Liz.
Yeah, Messieurs, before you answer that question, it is mind-boggling, to understand why will our EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, waive those requirements when Dr. Vincent Adams, who is also very specialized in this area, says the environmental impact assessment is the Bible for a project like this, and they need to follow. And as Dr. Brandy mentioned, it gives you all you need to do if and when it is required to be done. So do you think, in answering the question, is it the politicians controlling the EPA, or EPA is independent on your own?
That question I'm not going to answer because I don't have enough information to answer it. I could tell you what they are doing. So basically, in this EIA, even if following Dr. Adams's analogy of the Bible or any other sacred book for that matter, even in this project, in the EIA, there's a part of it that talks about the emergency regulations and how you are going to deal with any accidents. We don't even in Guyana have a gas management plan, a gas integrity management plan, as they're called in some places, or as the Americans and Exxon was calling it, the gas leak management plan. So that whole risk factor of what if the pipeline or blows up, or there, God forbid, but that's a reality. It can happen. We don't have that, and that's a requirement under the Act. So that part has been completely left out. There's a whole consultation that should have gone on with the community, which did not happen where the pipeline passes through. So the community in Java and Bordeaux, which is Canal Number 1, were never consulted about this. The community in Wales was never, in Crane, was never consulted about this. And it's in the Act about these things, and they are, principles, well-established international principles about consultations. And this still hasn't happened in the environmental permit. They're talking about stakeholder engagement plan, and stakeholders still haven't been engaged. So it's a lot of words that are written that the law isn't being followed. And this becomes a liability issue if, God forbid, something is to happen in the future. So hence the need to follow the law. And further, if we're not obeying laws, or the environmental protection, which is a statutory body, is not obeying laws, what laws can anybody break, or what laws do we know that will be effective and what are not going to be effective? How do we determine what are good laws and what are bad laws and what are laws to be followed?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to All Talk with OGGN Guyana on Kaito Radio 99.1, 99.5 FM, also on Facebook and on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up if you like our program. And also, if you want more information on our discussion, you can go to oggn.org. There's a whole lot of information there on oil and gas. All of our programs that we are doing is there, and a lot of articles written by so many Guyanese, including Dr. Brandy. We have all those discussion there on oggn.org. Mrs. Hughes, you're one of many landowners owning land upon which the gas pipeline will traverse. What was the process followed to acquire those lands for the purpose of building the pipeline? And was it legal, and were the landowners fairly compensated, in your opinion?
Okay, I will explain what happened and what we were told. And just so that you know, I'm not a title holder landowner, I'm a beneficial landowner. But the land has been in my family for 5 generations, of which we are the 5th. So sometime in September, the Attorney General, the Minister of Natural Resources, the Minister of Works, the head of the task force, and Guyana Lands and Surveys members or people who work with them, called a meeting of landowners in the Pipeway, and this was from basically Canal Number 1 to Crane. And the Attorney General said that this should be a consensual process because the government didn't want to go to the Compulsory Acquisition Act. And they engaged lawyers that started the consensual process. And in the middle of these discussions, because there are some people who would have had their access to their farms denied in our, there were other land issues. So in the middle of these discussions, in January, everybody woke up at the beginning of January and saw that there was this compulsory land acquisition. Now, the compulsory land acquisition is under an act, and the act clearly dictates how it should be accomplished, the process and the procedure. Along the way in that process and procedure, they were not followed, and a complaint was made by myself to the police about the trespass of the surveys. Nobody took on any of my emails, so nobody took me on, but it's there in writing and it's there who it's addressed to. The government decided to go by the Compulsory Acquisition Act. The valuations that were given out at that consensual meeting, which was at the request of the task force head, was below market value. It was even below the value that landowners had from their own valuations for whatever purposes they took those out for. It was below that value. And while we were on the public consultation trail post the submission of the EIA, ExxonMobil kept saying that ExxonMobil never leaves people. We will make sure that you get international market value. You don't have to worry. So when this happened, I asked ExxonMobil, what happened about your international market value? Of course, zip, nothing. And so that's completely below market value. But what has now happened is that when they realized that it was probably below market value, they started doubling the original price that they were paying people. So that budget is completely skewed. So we don't even know the price. Oh yeah, Andre, we didn't add that price in the land value, the land acquisition value. So that is a price that had to be added in. That was budgeted for. But if you're actually paying people double what you originally told them that you were going to pay, that budget is off. In our case, we challenged the whole process and procedure of the land, getting to the land under the Land Acquisition Act. That is in court. Twice, the Italian Guyanese company tried to get on the land to survey. The lawyer wrote twice to them and they backed off. On the second occasion, I told the surveyor, you probably need to get these people to indemnify if you're coming back here again. So they came back a third time with ExxonMobil onshore pipeline manager, a representative from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and a representative from Public Works, along with some other Exxon people. And they trespassed on the land. They were basically had to leave without the survey being completed. And subsequent to that, the Attorney General has now cross-filed another legal action for valuation of the land. So that's where it is. We have two actions that are being cross-filed, and this is before the project even starts. So yeah, let's see how that works. I don't know what they achieved there because now they have a longer timeline. We're into 2024 and they don't have the pipeline, and without the right of way of the pipeline, I don't imagine, but I don't know. ExxonMobil and their Stabroek Block partners will not make a financial decision.
Are there any other legal issues that need to be addressed in connection with this gas to energy project?
Oh, there are many others.
Okay, but before we go into those other ones, I would like to maybe for the listeners clarify two points that Liz had mentioned here. About Exxon has subcontracted the pipeline laying to a consortium of Van Oord and Subsea. They are in charge of doing the offshore pipeline laying. And as Liz mentioned correctly, it's an Italian company called SICIM or SICIM, and the Guyanese-owned Geico Construction General Services that are in charge of laying the pipelines. So that's with regard to the pipelines. I would also like to mention that we read in the press, and the Attorney General was very vocal about activists slowing down this whole process. And I think we have to make it very clear here that, first of all, it's the EPA that has been causing a lot of slowing down of the projects by not following the law, not doing environmental impact assessments, people going to court and challenging this because this is what the Environmental Protection Act requires. So if the Attorney General would just instruct or talk to the head of the EPA to follow the law, then I think projects would not be delayed. And it's just the rule of law demands that you follow these steps. Then the other point is that landowners have a right to proper compensation. There, my question is maybe to Liz, and I'm not up to date. As you mentioned, the Constitution calls that you cannot expropriate land without having an act passed by Parliament. When was this act actually tabled? Was there deliberation in Parliament about this act? And how was it? How was the vote? Did the opposition vote for this act? I must have missed this, but you're much closer to the whole issue because you're personally affected. Could you maybe inform us about this whole process so to make this clear? If you want to expropriate land from private owners, you have to pass a law in Parliament that explains why this is necessary. And once this is passed, then you can go to this process that you mentioned also, where you can get expropriate the land, but you have to compensate properly. And maybe to add on top of it, usually in the mediation, you will get independent assessors that would determine the value of the land. And I guess this would depend on whether it's agricultural land or whether this is a land where you can build housing or whether it's for industrial purposes. And that would also determine the different aspects, how much this land is really valued, that the government of Guyana has to compensate landowners. I'm handing over this to Liz for further explanations and clarifications.
Okay, there is, and there has been, I think it's a 1914 act, don't quote me exactly on the date, but it's a very old act. The Compulsory Acquisition Act, which allows, and it has, they have acquired land throughout time from, from, I can remember in the 70s and more recently for projects that are of national interest. There was an amendment to the act recently, within the last 2 years. In terms of how that voted, I have no idea. But I mean, if you have a majority in Parliament, that's just the way it goes.
Well, you have a one vote majority. One vote majority, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but that's the
Thank
gig.
Okay. And Dr. Brandel and Ms. Hughes, we ran out of time. As discussion is so beautiful, time has really get out on us. But I want to put in this one question before we close. Could Guyana do without the gas to shore project, the gas to energy project?
Absolutely. You know, for 2.5, well, 2.5 if I add in the running late costs and the unknown costs. Dollars, if we actually, I mean, this is going to be a stranded asset. Gas and oil have a very limited life. According to the IEA, it will peak, oil will peak, and therefore the associated gas will peak in the year 2030. And even if you say that is, you know, incorrect, it's probably not going to go 10 years beyond that. This project that has a 25-year or 30-year life. Why are we spending $2.5 billion when we could, you know, be ahead of the curve and use alternative energy, whether it's the sun or the wind? There's already a project, or there's some of the infrastructure is up for the wind project. The IEFA recent report, you know, basically, I don't know if you know about it, that claims that gas to energy is financially not viable nor sustainable, and it's a waste of money. Basically said solar is the way to go. And I don't understand how the gas to energy fits in with the whole GPL, the GPL plan for the next 5 to 10 years. So we are just spending money for no good reason, really. That is not, and it's only 68% of the population that will benefit from this. If we go to alternative energies, plug the same money in, everybody will benefit.
And Dr. Brandel, before you come on, Barbados recently they're building a solar farm there, and they're generating tremendous amount of electricity at a fraction of the cost we are spending for this gas to the gas to shore project. Why are we just going right ahead without consideration, as Ms. Hughes just said? If 70% of the population use to serve the facility, we're spending 2.5 billion. When will that be recoverable?
Well, I would like to, I mean, I differ a little bit with my views about the gas to energy project. I think one has to look at a whole bunch of different issues here. First of all, what's the electricity production in Guyana, the electricity needs, the annual in the country? They are currently, the last numbers I found were, I think, from 2019, and they are at 1.2 terawatt hours per year. So that's what we have to provide an electricity. So maybe with a growing population and increasing energy needs, let's put it at 2 terawatt hours per year. Dean Hughes is correct. We can cover a lot of this with solar energy, with wind power. There is the Hope Wind project, the Hope Wind Farm that has investors there. Nobody knows why this is stalled. I've heard through the grapevine that the government is not happy with one of the investors there, who's apparently affiliated with the opposition, and therefore this whole project is stalled. It has not been brought to the press. I've gotten this information from 2 independent sources. I think it's a scandal that this project is not moving ahead, because Guyana needs really this project to be started, that we can evaluate also the feasibility and also how much wind power can effectively provide to the energy mix, particularly the electricity mix that Guyana will have in the future. Now, here is the major problem. Solar power and wind power are variable. So you need baseline energy supply, and this can be at several levels. So currently Guyana provides baseline energy. This means energy also during the night or when there's no wind, using diesel and heavy oils. We want to move away from that because they emit a lot of CO2. By moving to gas, you can cut your CO2 output by 50% because natural gas contains also hydrogen that then burns to water. So this move to burning natural gas instead of diesel and heavy oils has an environmental benefit. The alternatives to burning hydrocarbons for electricity production is to use hydroelectric power. You might be aware that the Amala Falls power plant is still on the radar. There are big questions about, is that site really the best site? Are there better sites that are closer to the major population areas? This means to the metropolitan area of Georgetown. And an additional option would be nuclear power. I think this is not realistic in Guyana to have nuclear power to provide baseload energy in the country. The population is too small, the technology is too complicated to be run in Guyana. So, and there's an additional option that nobody talks about, is to use incinerators to produce electricity at night. And the nice thing with an incinerator is that you burn the garbage that ends up currently in landfills. You could burn that garbage, you can use that to produce electricity at night, and you can compensate when solar energy and wind power might not be available. So you can fire up an incinerator at night and then produce that energy when you might have a gap in the energy on the grid. The bottom line is we've had not a discussion and a planning and a careful assessment. What are the options that Guyana has really to provide baseload energy and to stabilize the grid? And this type of discussions are completely missing. And maybe a last point before I close on my side with this topic is there's also alternatives to piping gas to shore. And we've touched this initially. Why do we have, I mentioned that we have 1.2 terawatt hours of energy needs to produce electricity in Guyana. Now, the LNG tankers, the Qmax size of LNG tankers that carry liquefied natural gas have an energy content of 1.6 terawatt hours. So one LNG tanker would be per year would be currently sufficient to provide sufficient gas to the shore of Guyana to produce electricity for 1 year. That will be a lot cheaper than piping gas from the Liza 1 and Liza 2 reservoirs to shore. And it's flexible, which means that you can take the gas from the other reservoirs that are being developed now in the next years, and you would have then offshore gas liquefied. Yeah, you would liquefy the gas offshore. This is actually done. This technology is around. Australia is doing this in the northwest of Australia because there is no usage for their gas. It's also offshore gas fields. They liquefy the gas offshore and export it right away from offshore. So given also the whole congestion in the Georgetown area, why would you want to have additional pipelines there? Why would you want not just to export that gas right away? And maybe the last point is, I've just seen the Guyana's gas monetization strategy that was published on Monday this week. I looked into there, and the only number I find in there is that with regard to how much gas is actually out there, it says it's 17 trillion cubic feet of gas. And there is an estimate that would be sufficient for Guyana's electricity needs for 1,000+ years. So we have this number out there. I'm not sure whether it's validated or not, but again, that indicates there's far too much gas out there that Guyana could use itself, and we need really a well-designed strategy. What do we do with this gas? Do we inject it back into the reservoirs when we are producing, when we are extracting oil? Are we exporting it? Are we using it onshore? The onshore use is very limited. We have a small population in Guyana, and are there better alternatives? I'm afraid that given the fact that these pipes are already in the country, that Exxon and the government are totally geared to this, that this discussion is coming late, and we're going to spend $2 billion and might find out, like Liz had mentioned, that we have a stranded asset, particularly when the gas numbers or the available gas is smaller than projected from Liza 1 and Liza 2, and we lose all flexibility. This would mean that we have to maybe move to Payara, again put in pipelines at probably, again, at least $500 million US. I would like to remind you that 2 pipelines from Liza 1 and Liza 2 cost, current projections are $1 billion. So is the government planning to build one pipeline after the other to the shore for a domestic market whose gas needs will go down over time, as Liz also pointed out, because the low carbon strategy of the government indicates that we will use less hydrocarbon, we will burn less hydrocarbons in future. So
thank you, Dr. Brandon. Your information is so amazing, and we wish the government would listen. But again, we only give information, the government not. Miss Hughes, time has run out on us. Anything in closing before we bring the program to an end?
Yeah, briefly, we actually don't know if there is enough gas for this project to begin with, because in May, Exxon said that they didn't have enough gas. But apparently they finished a 270-day gas utilization plan. It would be helpful if they release that to the public, because we already know there's no gas in Whiptail. We don't know if Liza 1 and 2 really have enough gas for this. And lastly, I noticed in the audit that they allowed the recompensation or reclaim, or however you say that, for the studies for the gas project. So it would be, if somebody can ask, because they never answer me, some NGO or some person would ask what to have these studies released, so that we know what's in those studies, because Exxon already have been reimbursed for those studies, and they were allowed in the 2017 to 2020 audit. So we need those studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you, viewers on Kite Radio 99.1, 99.5 on YouTube and on Facebook. Give a thumbs up if you like our program. Go to oggn.org to get some more information, a lot of information, oil and gas. Go there and you will see it. Next time we meet again, which is week after next, the time on the eastern seaboard and most of this part of the world will change this weekend. So we will be 1 hour behind Guyana time. So the next program we'll start here in New York at 6:20, which will be 7:20 Guyana time. So it will remain Guyana 7:20, but it will be 1 hour earlier here in New York. Dr. Brandl, I know you want to say something in closing, but quickly, if you don't mind, and Ms. Hughes, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, first of all, I would really thank Liz Diane Hughes very much on behalf of the entire directorship of OGGN, that she came on this program and that she was willing to do this show with us. It's been great information. I've learned a lot myself. You filled in some of my gaps. In closing, I would also like to urge the government of Guyana to release the information and press Exxon to provide this information for all those 16 or 18 plus wells they've drilled. What's the composition of the hydrocarbons that were found there? Do we have predominantly oil? Are they mixed? reservoirs or are they gas-only reservoirs? The Haimara reservoir close to the border with Suriname is apparently mainly gas. We need these numbers because otherwise Guyana's gas monetization strategy that the government released earlier this week is completely useless. And there's actually not much information, to be quite honest. I read it today and it's unclear to me what's the strategy. And without having that information, you can't do careful planning how you're going to utilize these resources for the benefit of the Guyanese people. So I would like to close here.
Thank you, Dr. Brandley, for your time. I know it's very late there in Europe, but thank you so much for staying up and being with us tonight. Ms. Hughes, quickly, anything in closing, 15 seconds.
Okay, I just want to say thank you very much for the invite. And there are still a lot of other legal issues around the NGL and the power plant site because Gaisuco owns the land and the land is agricultural. And, Exxon has the permit for the NGL plant, but Lyseca is building the plant. So there are a lot of other legal issues to sort out. But it really was a pleasure. And I really thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
I want to thank both of you. I know I have so many more questions to ask, but time has run out on us. But we hope you'll come back sometime in the future so we can continue the discussion. To you, Dr. Brandley, and to Ms. Hughes, thank you so much to our audience.
Thank you, Charles.
Until the next time, good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Kaiser Radio.
Covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaiser Radio.
Bet that money on baby, bet she don't leave me, oh no. See them